Hi, guys, welcome back. So, today we're going to talk about the different methods that I use to pay off more than $47,000 of consumer debt. So, the two methods that are predominantly used are one, the first one is known as the debt snowball, and the second method is known as the debt avalanche. Let's dive into the debt snowball. So, the debt snowball comprises of listing all your debts from the smallest to the greatest and attacking that smallest debt and slowly going down till you get to the greatest debt. So, for example, I'm going to go over my own debts that I've had. My first debt was $462.30. That was my medical debt. The second debt is $756.96. That's my Wells Fargo debt. The next one is $1,272.65. That was my Amazon credit card. And then the very other debt is $7,806. That was my car loan. And the very last one, which is the big debt, $31,250, which was my student loans. So notice how I listed these from the smallest to the greatest. And what I would do is I would attack my first debt. So that first smallest debt is $462.30. So when I create my budget, which is extremely important, that is one of the very first steps that you need to do in order for you to start attacking this. You create that budget so that you see where all of your money is going, and any extra money that you have, all of my extra money would be going to that medical debt that I have because it's my smallest one, and that is the debt snowball. Now, the pros of this, the pros is that you are getting a very quick satisfaction, very quick dopamine rush because you're able to attack it very quickly. And so you get that rush, you get a momentum going, which is really essentially what that snowball is. That snowball is taking a very small amount, rolling it, rolling it, rolling it until it becomes a very large snowball, so to speak. And that's where that term comes from. So that's the pro of using that debt snowball. Now, the con foremost is that it may take longer because you are attacking its smallest to greatest. It may take longer for you to pay off your consumer debt. And because it is taking longer, thus you may pay interest, higher interest than if you use that second method that we're going to talk about. So now let's talk about the debt avalanche. So the debt avalanche is I am going to list all of my debts. However, I am disregarding total balance of my debt and I am focusing on the interest. So I am listing my debts with the highest interest. Now, this is an example of how you could use this, particularly for student loans, because if you notice, for those of you guys who have student loans, like I have student loans, you'll notice that they are different amounts of balances and they have different percentages. So, this is an example of how we can use that debt avalanche method. So, that first debt is $6,362, and that interest rate is at 5.2%. The second debt is $5,215. That interest rate is at 5.2%. The next one is $4,012. That interest rate is at 4.1%. And the very last one is at $3,632, and that interest rate is at 3.4%. Notice how this is listed with the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate. Now, if you have interest rate that are the same, such as the first two interest rate, as you see, they are both 5.2%, you are going to list that highest balance because, again, essentially you'll be paying more interest since that balance is higher. Okay, so again, I have the $6,342 at 5.2. I have the $5,215 at 5.2. However, I'm going to attack the $6,342 because the purpose of this and the goal of this debt avalanche method is that I want to pay the least amount of interest rate. And that goes to our pro for this. The pros for this method, when one uses this, is that they are saving on the interest rate that is being paid. And that's the pro of this. Now, the con to this is for individuals who may need a quicker gratification, they may not get that so quickly with this method. So, for individuals who are able to maybe withstand themselves longer, this method can be used for them. They do save much more money on this method. And at times, it's also a process of elimination, too, because running the numbers also helps to see if this is the method to use. Now, for me specifically, I started my debt payoff journey in about mid of 2021. And during that time, I was working in a career that did not pay quite as much. So I actually needed that quicker gratification. I needed that quick, oh my gosh, I did it. Oh my gosh, this is paid off. Oh my gosh, this loan is done. Let's move on to the next one. I needed that. So I absolutely used the debt snowball for this. I listed my smallest debt at the time, it was my medical debt, and I attacked that, and then I moved on to my credit card debt. I did switch careers after going back to school. I switched careers in late of 2023, and I then received a huge increase in my salary. So when I started to attack my student loans specifically, I did decide to use the debt avalanche because I had more income that I was able to throw on that debt. Now, this is for reference purposes. My credit card, thankfully, did not have any interest rates on them. So it was my Amazon credit card and my Wells Fargo. They did not have any interest rates on them. The only debts that I did have that was accumulating interest was my student loans and my car loan at the time. It is very important to understand that when choosing this method, it mainly has to do with personality, with end goals that you have, how long you want to take to pay off this debt. And so, some questions to consider when you are trying to decide, should I use the debt snowball method? Should I use the debt avalanche method? So, the first question to consider is, in other instances, do I remain motivated for long periods of time? And that motivation, that long period of time can be deemed as 6 months to about a year to maybe a year and a half, or even 2 years and a half. How motivated do I remain in the long haul of something, in the long haul to get something done? That is a good question to ask oneself. A second question is, how quickly do I want to pay off this debt or my debt in general? What time frame do you have in mind? Is it 6 months, a year, 2 years? That what happens is when you answer that question, you can run the numbers because there are calculators that we can use. We can run the numbers comparing how long it takes if I use the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche method to see which one. For many individuals, they will notice that it's actually a couple of months in between. It might be 2 to 3 months if you use one method versus the other method. And for some, getting that quick gratification might be better for them so that they can continue that momentum. The third question that is important to consider is, do I need quicker gratification or am I able to prolong that gratification in order to save more money? That is a very good question to ask yourself. And the only way to answer that question is to really understand and kind of look at the historical events that has taken place in your life and how you've been able to maneuver going forward. How have you been, let's say, even in just schoolwork, in college specifically, if you went to a trade school, when you look at your schoolwork, do you realize you need quick feedbacks, especially let's say when you're doing a project? Or are you able to take the time, work on it, turn it in, see your grade? These are things that you can consider even in your own personality. Now, for individuals who tend to have larger debts, it may be more psychologically beneficial for them to do the debt snowball because it's going to take them 3, 4, maybe 5 years to pay that off. And doing that very long term can get very draining for someone who has a smaller amount of debt. And that smaller amount of debt is very relative to one's overall income and situation and how much you feel like it's drowning you, right? That is very relative. But if it's very small and you've calculated and you've noticed, oh, I can pay this off in about a year, I can pay this off in 6 months, then it might be beneficial to use that debt snowball. I'm sorry, no. It might be beneficial to use that debt avalanche method because you're now saving money on interest because we don't want more money to get out of our pockets. We want to keep that money in. I want to ask you this question because I've had to ask myself this question: which one is the best method to use? And do understand that do not get stuck on this. It is very important to start. We need to start. So, don't sit there too long and think, oh, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do this? Oh my gosh, I don't know if it. Let's just start. If you don't know, I recommend just do the debt snowball. See how that momentum is. And if you notice that you have maybe a little bit more momentum and you maybe don't need it as much because you are very fired up and you are ready to get rid of this debt, you can move on to the next one. The beauty about this is that you are actually able to switch over as I did, and it was very helpful for me. I did the snowball method one time because again, I did not have that much disposable income. And then I switched over to the avalanche method when I realized that my income was much more and I was able to put more at the debt. Do make a decision. Do make a decision and think about your personality. Think about what those long term goals are so that we can get started. For those of you guys who have actually paid off or is in the process of paying off debt, what method has worked for you? I know that there are so many methods out there. What method has worked for you? I just told you my two. Let me know. Did you use the debt snowball? Did you use the debt avalanche? And if so, how long did it take you? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you soon.